Okay, I want to thank you all for coming to the second SCAA Town Hall on reopening. Unfortunately, Brenda is not able to be with us, so my name's Jim Cross and I will be facilitating today. As I said earlier, in the logistics portion of this, I do encourage people to participate, to ask questions, to make comments, because this will only be as successful as you all make it. In order to start things off, to kind of break the ice, Virginia Ellison of the South Carolina Historical Society and Beth Bilderback from the South Caroliniana have both been kind enough to offer to tell us a little bit about what they've been doing as part of their reopening. And Virginia, since you are already in a partial reopening, we will go ahead and ask you to start us off.
Sure, thank you. So I'm with the South Carolina Historical Society, and as most of you know, we're kind of in a unique situation where we are housed on the College of Charleston campus and share space with their Special Collections Department. So the Historical Society staff started back on June 1st with limited access to the collection and the reading room. So right now we have 2 people in the reading room area, one in the back where the cubicles are, and one in the front working in the reading room. And then we also have our processing archivist in another room where she's able to get her work done. So we're all pretty spread out. We have to wear masks unless we're at our desk. We can take them off there. It's a pretty interesting setup. It's very quiet, and I miss everyone. So one thing we started doing was quarantining the materials we pulled. And that has, so at first every time we touched them, we put them in a quarantine space. Turns out we touch a lot of our materials on a daily basis. And with limited access, I would be there, one day a week, and you'd have 15 or 20 boxes sitting out waiting for me to come back the next week. So what we are doing for now is just putting a Post-it on the shelf below the box, with our initials and our date. So we can come back 3 days later and pull the Post-it, just so people know when the last time materials were touched, things like that. Another thing about the Historical Society is we're a nonprofit. So we are a membership-based and donation-based institution. And those aren't doing well right now. So we have had furloughs. Each staff member is required to take 4 weeks of furlough. So most of my colleagues took off the month of July, and it's very quiet again. So we've been focusing on our services, which are income producing right now, and we've just seen a huge uptick in our reproduction and research services that we're offering folks. What else? So I think that's it on our limited return. I have been in talks with Mary Jo Fairchild about our next phase, our reopening. We're working towards, a reopening to the public on August 24th when students return. Of course, that's probably going to change. Everything's been changing recently. And at that time, we're going to offer two appointments in the morning from 9 to 12 and 2 appointments in the afternoon, 1 to 4. The reference librarian, 1 person for each institution, will be in charge of conducting really robust reference interviews to make sure it's worth their while to come in to visit. And then after that, if it doesn't fit, we'll offer reproduction services or research services, or just, a quick scan for folks that really don't need to come in. Let me see, can I share my screen? No. Okay, well, what we do have kind of a layout of our reading room for reopening. We normally have 2 people serving the reference desk, and once we reopen, we'll only have 1 person. The researchers will be on either side of the room and won't be allowed to do any pulling of the ready reference materials in the reading room. And with the reference interviews, we will also request that they put in their call slips 3 days prior to their visit so we can pull the materials, quarantine them in a certain area, and then once they're ready to visit, just roll out so they know that they haven't been touched and that those materials are safe for them. For materials that researchers have touched, there will be a quarantine area specifically for them. Fortunately, right now, I feel like people have been pretty understanding that they can't visit. I haven't had anyone really pushy wanting to get in, so that's been pretty easy. I think that's it for me. Any questions?
Virginia Ann asks, have you set up a mask policy?
Yes, so we are requiring everyone coming into the building to wear masks, and we can provide those if they don't have any. They just, oh, well, of course I closed. Hold on, I was going to share my screen to show you kind of the setup, but I closed it out. Here we go.
And Ann asks, are you having people wash their hands before they come into the reading room?
Yes, we will direct them to the bathroom so they can wash their hands. So here is our floor plan. So as you can see, we've got our reference desk. At the front of that, we do have plexiglass. It just goes across the front. I kind of would have preferred that they put it on the sides too. We're going to block access on either side. That goes back to the lockers where the patrons put their bags, their coats, things like that. So they're not going to have access to the lockers during that time. They're going to be putting their belongings on one of our reading room desks. As I said, they don't have any access to the bookshelves. And then to the right, we have the Chi Omega room, which is kind of like a small meeting room. And that is where we are going to put quarantine ready reference materials and also no patron access in there. We can pull materials for them. And you know, we've also been doing our Zoom meetings in there if there's more than 1 person in the special collections area, so because we can close off that room. As you can see, we aren't going to allow any access to the copier. Probably, we haven't really discussed the microfilm machine yet. Fortunately, that doesn't get requested too often anymore. So, any questions? Okay, well, I'm going to stop the sharing my screen and hand it over to Beth.
Hey y'all, sorry, technical difficulties here. Thanks, Virginia. You know, we're sort of in a similar situation at USC in that because of the renovations on our building, we're also in the main university library as well. So we will be abiding by the precautions that have been put in place for the main university library, and those do include that masks are required. Actually, the university has expanded that now to all the university buildings. So anytime anyone is in a university building, they have to have a mask on. There's also a no food policy, which, you know, we've always had that, so it doesn't really affect us, but it will be put in place for the rest of the library. And we have instituted and opened up an additional stairwell in our library so that we now have one stairwell going up and one stairwell going down to hopefully alleviate some of the crowding onto the elevators. We, in conjunction with discussions with the public health folks here at USC, we did go ahead and put a limit of 4 people per elevator in the Cooper Library. We know that that's more than the 2 people that's recommended, but we always have such a crush of people waiting to get in the elevator that, you know, the queue for getting on the elevators could very well reach to the other side of the library, because we are going to try to, you know, have physical distancing spaces set out for that. So we're trying to, you know, to do as much as we can. And, you know, we're looking at physically distancing our study areas as well. And the special collections units really are moving towards an appointment-only basis. All of the libraries are, so Carroll, Indiana, Irvin Department of Rare Books, South Carolina Political Collections, Moving Image Research Collections will all be by appointment only. And at Carroll, Indiana, you know, for us, we've been looking at, you know, how many people we can get in our reading room currently. And right now, we'll probably start with 1 person per appointment time. We may be able to expand that to 2 at some point, depending on how things go. But right now, that's sort of what we're looking at. And I know Edward Blessing is here. He can certainly correct me if I misspeak on anything about. We also, all of the libraries are setting up quarantine areas for collections. You know, we have a situation where some of our collections are stored off-site, so we have sort of a double quarantine situation where they have to be quarantined when they come into us off-site for a few days before they can actually, you know, be given to a patron or used by staff. So all of that has to be built in to the process. And so, you know, we're still trying to make sure we have all of that figured out. Right now, we have a few people who are coming in, scattered schedule, so that we don't have people there on top of each other. And that probably will continue. We found that we can work pretty well virtually. Of course, you know, we don't have access to a lot of our collections, so some of our reference requests, you know, have been waiting in a queue. And I know Edward and the user services staff have been able to get back in the past week or so to begin trying to address those. And we probably will continue with some sort of scan and deliver model as well, just so that, you know, people won't feel that they have to come into the library if we can offer to send them, you know, scans of what they need. We know that, you know, a lot of patrons really do like to get in and look at the materials and often don't really know what exactly they want in a multi-box, multi-carton collection. So, you know, we know people will still need to come in, but we really are hoping that for a lot of our requests, we can just handle that by scan and deliver. Let's see, I think we provide sanitizer, but we also recommend, sometimes we've done this even before the COVID situation, that actually people stop by the bathroom and wash their hands before they come in. Edward found a really cute sign, and I can't remember now what it says, about washing your hands before you come in to do your research. So that's actually been up in place for a little while. Yeah, sanitize before you analyze. Thank you, Edward. Yeah. So, so we've been doing that, and we of course will continue that. We're also putting up a lot of new signage all over the library, Cooper Library, and A lot of that is going to be directional because we're doing some different things. We are also closing 3 levels of the Cooper Library, and that essentially also closes the stacks for the library. So even with Cooper Library and Music Library, if people need access to books or serials or whatever, those have to be requested through the catalog, and we will either mail those out or people can stop by and pick them up. And there'll be an area in the front of Thomas Cooper, and this is only for the general collections, none of the special collections materials, but there'll be an area in the front of Thomas Cooper where people can make a quick stop in to get that and then immediately go back out, so they don't have to actually go into the main library at all. We're really scaling down a lot of the services in the main library. Reference is scaling back to really becoming virtual only, which we've been doing the whole time. Actually, Edward's gotten set up as a book a chat, so he can spend times doing an actual interview with researchers, and circulation is not going to be open to the public. They're really going to be working behind the scenes, filling requests that are put through the catalog. And Cooper's also implementing a new entry feature to the library where you'll have to scan your Carolina card to get in. And this will, excuse me, this will allow us to monitor the capacity for Cooper Library. We are, all the buildings now on campus are looking at limiting capacity, and so we've come up with a number that's based on sort of a combination of available seating, study seats, and space in other areas of the open floors. So we do need to be able to track that. And so people will scan in and they'll scan out, and that should give us sort of real-time numbers as to how many we have in the building. Starbucks, I see Ann's asking about Starbucks and food. So Starbucks will be open. What we've been working with them, however, to find a way that they can still serve people by using sort of a back door to the library, so that people don't have to walk through the library or actually form long queues in the library, which would spill over into areas where people are walking. So people can order, online and stop in and pick it up and then take it right back out. We, are still, there will still be an area where people in the building can order. And we're going to sort of deal with that as we can. Starbucks is really only able to go make so many concessions for us. So we're in a situation where it's going to be, this is what we're going to try, and we'll see how it works, for how long it'll work, sort of thing. And that we know that the kids can be creative in terms of bringing things in and sneaking things in. But the university has, the university student government actually has instituted a campaign called I Pledge Columbia. And it's not just, Carolina, it's Columbia, because we know that what happens at the university affects what happens in Columbia, because we have a lot of students who live off campus. And part of that pledge is to abide by the regulations that are being put into place during the pandemic, and that includes wearing a mask and social distance and all of that. So we're really hoping that with the mask policy in place, that people may find it a little difficult to eat while wearing a mask in the library, and that they won't try to sneak in food. but the only thing that really could be sort of actionable is the part about wearing a mask, because that actually has been added to the student code of conduct. So students are very aware at this point, or should be, that they will have to be wearing a mask in the libraries, all libraries on campus. So, you know, circulation people are sort of our security people in a normal situation, and they've been working on scenarios to help them try to find ways to remind students and others about the responsibility that they have to help protect everyone on that. So I'll probably stop at that point, see if there are any questions.
I think we had one more question from Grace, but I believe Edward may be answering this one. Grace asked, are you charging the usual fees for scanning items that are being digitally delivered? And I think Edward is planning on clearing this up a little bit more once you wrap up this.
Yeah, so I mean, you know, Edward can certainly jump into that. You know, until we're actually open. Oh, and we are, Thomas Cooper is planning an August 3rd reopening at this point. So it will be then that people can actually come in to do research. And so that may be changing our fee schedule. But I think, yeah, Edward, if you have more to say about that, that'd be great.
Sure, I'll just, I can touch on that. So I mean, I'm sort of ethically, you know, being closed to researchers, I've tried to keep track of all their responses, and I don't see that kind of the delay, like making it up to them, the delay in access. We're doing sort of selectively free scanning for some of the smaller requests or things that might be, we get a lot of genealogy questions, and so we have some genealogy questions and we can just make some scans of sort of family trees from published materials. We're going ahead and doing that for free. It doesn't take very long. We're fortunate that we have just acquired a new scanner, Zeuchel Zeta scanner. The library purchased a number of these. It's a really fast process. I mean, I was able to do some scans. I mean, I can do about 150 or 160 scans an hour from a published material, and that's a 300 DPI PDF. We're triaging the manuscript requests, and hopefully, you know, we'll figure out kind of how many we can do on an hourly basis. And then moving forward, you know, we might provide, say, an hour of free scanning, and then above that, we might charge a $40 or $50 hourly fee based on how many scans it might turn out to be. We're essentially using this as an opportunity to get a lot of data in terms of how long it takes us to make different types of scans on different pieces of equipment. Probably something, you know, as we have new equipment, I think this is useful, and it really allows us to set some benchmarks in terms of productivity. So it's both giving some free information away, but also using it to compile statistics and kind of benchmarks, if you will.
Good. Thanks, Edward. All right. Any other questions? All right. Well, I know y'all have general questions too, so I'll let those commence. Thank you, everybody.
Jim, you're still on mute.
Remember my own protocols. Okay. Since question did come up about Starbucks in the library, and we have one, I'm not exactly up on that, mainly because I don't work in Cooper. Do you happen to remember what the policy is for the Starbucks over there?
I'm not sure. I think they're still working with Starbucks to figure out a process, but I do know that we're removing all of the seating in the seating area so that they have more space for the queuing line. So I think they are looking at what space is available and providing more room for that line to form and keep social distancing. But I believe they're still planning to be open. I think there's also other discussions about how we might do something similar to Thomas Cooper by finding a way for a pickup space to be closer to the entrance so that people don't have to go deeper into the library to pick up their order and leave. So that's another option that they're exploring.
Okay,
Jessica, if it would help, the Aramark folks actually came up with a floor plan. They also are removing furniture from that area, create a different queuing area. I'd be glad to share, or somebody on Clemson campus wants to reach out to the Columbia campus Aramark folks. I'm sure they'd be glad to share that. So it does show the queue will be different, seeing of waiting for pickup and all of that. So yeah.
Thank you, Beth. I will let them know and pass that along. I'm sure that would be helpful.
Okay, great.
Anyone else that would like to talk about what they're doing? I noticed that Raymond Jackson from the State Archives in the chat put in their safety guidelines. Anyone from the archives want to talk about what you're doing?
Jim, this is Catherine Slover here. I can talk a little bit. So we opened yesterday fully to the public. We sort of skipped over the, sorry if I'm a little mumbled too, I have a mask on right now, I'm in the office, so sorry if you can't hear me, but we sort of skipped over the appointment only when the state moved into phase 2. And right now we have, I don't know how many of you have been to the archives building, but we have like a reception desk where people sign in, and we have plexiglass there right now when you walk in. Although the whole thing isn't covered, and there are hopes that it will be eventually. And then there's plexiglass surrounding our reference desk completely. Like I said, it's not appointment only, so we can, there isn't a capacity, but we are trying to encourage social distancing with markers on the floor. We've removed some chairs. We've marked some computers and microfilm machines non-usable, so people are 6 feet apart. One thing we're doing is all of the computers and microfilm readers have signs that say sanitized and ready to use, and we're asking patrons to flip them over when they're done, so we know that that needs to be sanitized in between each use. Staff are required to wear masks right now, but as a state building, apparently we do not fall under the City of Columbia's mask ordinance, so we cannot require masks of our patrons. We can only strongly encourage people to wear masks. Like I said, we just opened yesterday, but so far I think everyone who came in yesterday, there were about 3 people, and I think we've had 3 people in today have all worn masks. So trying to think what else we're doing. At this point, we are not quarantining any materials, whether it be microfilm or books in the reference room or archival collections. We have hand sanitizer stations in the entrance of the building and in the reference room for people to use. I'm trying to think what else we've got going on. Yeah, but a lot of it, like I said, we're really trying to encourage social distancing by, like I said, taking away some of the chairs so people can't sit down. Like we just opened yesterday, so I don't know how this is all going to go. I will say when we opened at 8:30, there was already one of our regular patrons ready to come in at 8:30. So if you have, those regulars, I'm sure that will be a similar thing for everyone. But I said so far so good. We haven't had a ton of people. I don't know how that'll increase as summer goes on though. That's usually our busy time, and we have gotten some messages on Facebook like, when are you going to open? Can I come visit? So we'll see what that brings.
Okay. Do we have any comments from the chat that we need to share? Tabitha?
Yes. So we have one comment from Mary Jo at CFC, and she says we're following guidelines from SAA to encourage remote work, staff work from home as much as possible. One of the challenges we have is accommodating staff access to the non-reading room and public segment of our shop. We have over a dozen staff members between the South Carolina Historical Society and CFC, and we can only accommodate 2 to 3 staff persons at a time. Scheduling on-site work is really tricky. And then Grace has said, my collection was open by appointment for 4 days in June, but has been closed to the public since June 19th.
Thank you. Thank you, Tabitha. Anyone else like to talk about what they're doing? Okay. Well, I think that I can certainly share what Special Collections is doing. Oh, pardon me, we've got another, I just saw another comment. If you don't mind, Tabitha, I'll
Sure.
pick this one up. Edward is saying that one of the reasons that Caroliniana is starting with a single patron at a time is that some of our scanning and microfilm equipment is located in our reading rooms. So even if we have only a single patron, we would have one reference staff member monitoring them, possibly another staff member working with microfilm, and another staff member on a book document scanner. And based on square feet of the room, that's capacity. Okay, thank you, Edward. Let me go ahead and share what's happening at Special Collections at Clemson. We also the libraries are supposed to be opening August 3rd to staff, although Cooper may indeed open August 3rd, as of right now, of course. That can always change. In Special Collections, what we're hoping to do is, if that August 3rd date holds, to open to staff that day and take a week to try out all of our new and procedures using the staff, and if we have any students and student workers and the students as kind of guinea pigs to see, okay, well, will this work or will this won't work. What I can say is that phases at Clemson are out. We're looking at staggered work schedules. There is a mask-only social distancing mandate from the university on campus, and similar to USC, there is going to be some sort of agreement that the students will have to adhere to as part of that. The university is also planning to test all of the staff. They're also planning on doing training, hopefully before we restart, on new procedures and how to explain new procedures to faculty and staff who are coming in. As you might expect, planning is in flux because the university and the library are still working their planning out due to rapidly changing conditions. We heard more stuff today. We're going to hear more stuff tomorrow. Our provost is going to be talking about that again. As far as reference in special collections, we've redone our registration form to highlight the new rules that we have. There will be a plastic shield in place around the reference desk that's already been installed. We're moving and removing tables to enforce social distancing within the reading room. We're going to be open by appointment only to university students, staff, and faculty. Because we're going by appointment, we plan on having online reference interviews to talk about what patrons need, to go over our current rules and especially the new rules, and to determine whether what they need, does that require an in-person visit, or is it something where we can scan some material for them? Related to that, special collections staff will be handling all scanning. In fact, we will be removing the public computers or scanners from the reading room. However, we've always had a policy allowing people to use their cell phone cameras to make digital copies. And we're going to encourage them to do that if they can. We will not have more than 2 people at a time in the reading room. People coming in will have to show their ID to the person at the desk each day. That will be standing like 6 feet away from the desk and holding up their ID, because again, we'll already know who's supposed to be coming in. The stuff that they bring with them that will be put in a designated area, again, because of what the university is mandating, mask and physical distancing is going to be required. In addition to the by appointment, we're changing our hours to some extent from 9 to 12 and 1 to 4. That's to accommodate cleaning and staff lunch. We're also not paging any material later than 3:40 p.m. Now, there are still some details and logistics that need to be worked out. Some examples of that are cleaning, who and how often, movement within special collections. We have 2 doors to our stacks, and we are considering that kind of splitting it so that, well, if you're in this half of special collections, you'll go in that door. And if you're in this half special collections, you'll go in the other door. And dealing with the fact that our break room is in the back. So, you know, whether there's anything we have to worry about for that. We're also going to have to figure out specific locations for that patron material and also for quarantine material. We will be quarantining for 3 days. That's material that is used by patrons, and also material that we scan, and we're going to be upfront in telling folks that material might not be available simply because it's under quarantine. So for class projects, part of that reference interview will be talking to people and saying, you know, you're going to need to schedule kind of like who comes in when, and, you know, who covers what, as far as that is concerned. We may also, we've talked about but haven't come to any conclusion, I believe, concerning our call slips and how we may do that. We have talked about putting a form online, using Microsoft Forms. We do have a prototype. We need to get back and see how it works and talk about it a bit more, but that would save on, you know, people actually have to coming in and hand us a slip. We could pull it up on the computer. We could certainly make sure that that information is saved in a database, and that would be part of the form, so that we do have a record. And that's all that I have. If there are any questions, and also anything else from the chat.
Yes, so we have a few additional comments from the chat. Kate asked Grace about why they closed after 4 days, and then Grace mentioned there was an incident with a bit of a testy patron, so that definitely prompted their decision to close. Mary Jo, she's included a fall access plan that CFC Special Collections as well as the South Carolina Historical Society have drafted. And so that will be the foundation for any additional protocols or any sort of pandemic-induced workflow modifications. And so Edward has also asked, what platforms will folks be using for virtual reference interviews?
It would probably be something like Zoom. Let me make sure I'm answering the question. Yeah, it'd probably be something like Zoom. We've also got WebEx. I noticed that when I was checking the chat to make sure that I was answering the question correctly, that Deborah Harmon says they're using BB Collaborate, and Mary said that they're using Zoom or telephone at the College of Charleston. But yeah, it would be like that. If they don't have access to that, we could certainly do it by phone. But again, since we're opening to university students, staff, and faculty, we would expect that they should have access to Zoom or WebEx. And just notice that Anne has said that they can use their chat staff service at USC Upstate, and of course the telephone. Any other questions?
We have a question from Brooke. She's wondering why the state archives won't quarantine collections after use.
I'm not currently working reference, so as far as the protocols go with that, I'm not super in tune to that. I know that they mentioned something about it being spread more through air than surfaces, and so they are not as concerned about the collections as a source of spread, I guess. I don't have an exact answer for you. Like I said, I am not currently on the reference desk, and so I'm not entirely sure how they came to that conclusion. But I can ask and get an answer though. But yeah, at this point, I'm not sure how they came to that conclusion of why they weren't going to.
We've been keeping an eye on the realm research projects. They're in the third round of testing, but they did release the results of the first round. They found that on books and CD covers and things that would be highly circulated in a library collection, that the virus is basically inactive after 3 days. Kind of interested to see whether that same thing holds up for archival collections. But that's in part what we're basing our period on. And yeah, Edward Blessing noted that transmission is low, but it's still possible. I noticed that he also mentioned a resource account from BB Collaborate and gave a web link to COVID-19 research project from Web Junction. And that they may look at Zoom or WebEx as well. Oh, sorry. Just was told that the link that I just talked about is to Realm, so I really encourage people to keep an eye on that. And Tabitha, I think we've got a new.
Yes, Mary Jo has asked, have any institutions discussed the threshold for closing if necessary?
This is Ann Merriman at Upstate. We actually just had a meeting this morning among the group of librarians who are over the different areas, circulation and reference, and I'm included in that. And I asked that very question because it just seems as if the way the case rate is increasing in the state and all of that, I feel like a thinking person would think we're already past the point where we probably ought to be scaling back again. The answer on our campus was no decision has been made about that yet. So while I don't have an answer, I will put out that I do have a concern about that very thing. So yes, Amanda, exactly.
Grace has indicated that their library board of trustees is thinking about returning to only curbside service. So she's definitely with you, Anne. And so is Mary Jo. And then Catherine has said that she's asked that the Department of Archives and History, and because they are a state agency, the governor would have to send them home again. For MUSC, we're remaining closed as far as we know for now. For the fall semester, the provost, university provost, as well as the president met with our faculty last week to discuss those plans, and So far, they've told all the colleges, as far as any departments that have any programs that can function off campus, they will continue to do so, with the exception of clinicals as well as any simulation labs. So we're going under the impression that the library will also remain closed. There is a small team of library staff that goes in to monitor printers because students have requested printing services still. So that's still ongoing. But other than that, we are still working under the impression that we will work remotely. We do have a plan in place for whenever we do return to campus. And so that would incorporate the use of the sneeze guards for each of us, staggered work schedules, as well as restricting the amount of patrons that will have to come in at one time. So it'll be one person in the library at a time for reference visits. And then also, we'll also limit how many patrons we will have visiting within a day. We will also be quarantining materials. And then we've also decided that we'll create an online form for initial reference requests. So with this form, the patrons will be able to request a particular time that they would like to come in for a library visit if necessary. But they will also list any materials that they'll want to request at that time. And also, we will encourage them to be as detailed as possible on the form so that we can determine whether that's something that can be handled with digitization or whether that's something that they won't necessarily have to come in for a visit. So we'll just be trying to weed out as much as possible on the front end, which will also lead to a reference interview, whether that will be over the phone or with any sort of web platform. And then from there, we'll be able to determine whether they would come in for a visit or whether a visit wouldn't even be necessary at that point.
Speak before I unmute. I would say that any kind of decision about whether we open or close is going to be made at the university administration level. And I'm sure that's the case at USC as well, or practically any university. Believe me, that thought has crossed my mind and the minds of others, but there is a possibility of you can request an accommodation if you are in a high risk group, and the situation may encourage more people to try and do that. I know we've got more stuff in the chat, so.
Yes. Let's see. Where did I leave off? Amanda, I believe that's where I left off. She said that they'll be indefinitely delaying opening for Holt's pickup. She's in the public library in the wake of the 2 staff at different branches who've been diagnosed with COVID, so they're sticking with the curbside service for now. Edward said, personally, I don't mind going into the library to do scanning for reference and remote access, as there is hardly anybody there right now. So it'll be much more wary once they open back up to students for sure. So that is definitely a concern. And then Edward has also offered, please don't hesitate to email him if you have any scanning requests for the Caroliniana collections. And this is to the group at large. Beth has said, this is a perpetual question and planning group. Technically, USC has to close for us to close, but there may be a point where we don't have enough staff to stay open. And then Grace has also said the concern is for the lower level library staff whose jobs really cannot be done at home. We're potentially looking at furloughs or using personal leave to keep getting paid. I've let both of my helpers go, so I'm back to being a lone ranger. And then Mary Jo says, I'm sorry to hear you've lost colleagues to layoffs, Grace. And ditto.
as I mentioned, those of us in the library, and I'm sure on the campus of law at large, are concerned about this. One of the things that I think may be driving this is just economics. I mean, if we go online for the fall, we're going to lose a lot of money, and we're already taking financial hits because of this. And nobody wants to do, furloughs or layoffs or anything like that if they can possibly avoid it. So that's probably driving some of the desire to have us all return, because I don't think, certainly at the state institutions, that we're going to be able to get too much assistance from the state. Does anyone else have anything they would like to share?
This is Bill. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Whoever wants to go first.
You go ahead.
This is Bill McRee in Florence. Our plan when we move to the next phase with a opening to very limited services is to have our special collections closed. We have a questionnaire with sheet with information that the patron can fill out, and our special collections staff can contact the person and email information to them. So that's the point at this time. There are no tables, there are no chairs. The study rooms are going to be unavailable. Other meeting spaces will be unavailable. But that's where we are at this time. It all depends on whether we open or not, what our county council says. And also Florence now has a requirement to wear masks for patrons and those going into retail businesses and for the staff. I apologize for interrupting.
This is Anne at Upstate again. You did not interrupt, Bill. I stepped on top of you, so I apologize.
Sorry about that.
You.
No worries.
I thought this earlier today in my staff meeting, and it's bubbling back up again as I'm listening to everybody kind of go through what their processes are and kind of what everybody is thinking. And, it strikes me that we're all in a profession that is really geared towards helping people and providing a lot of service and providing a lot of support. But yet we're also information professionals we're all people who research things and really try to find as much information about things as possible. So I think this sort of sets up this perfect storm of kind of anxiety, if you will, because, we have these sort of two sides of ourselves that are really, battling each other. And it's not a good situation for any of us. And there, I don't have anything to offer other than, I'm feeling all of this, and I feel like many of you are probably, feeling that same thing. So, I'm glad that we're having these get-togethers. I'm glad that we all kind of have each other as a resource, because you guys are bringing up things that are giving me ideas to take back to my colleagues and my library. So I'm hoping that this is as helpful to everybody else as it is here. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. And anyone have other things to share from in either the chat or to the group at large via the magic of video?
I'll say something really quick. This is Mary Jo Fairchild of the College Charleston Special Collections. I wanted to thank members of the SCAA Executive Board for the statement on racism in recent events published, I think last month. And the reason I bring that up here is because there have been several comments about library workers and sort of the potential risk that we all face once either students come back to campus or public services re-engage and we reopen to the public. So really, I wanted to connect these two pieces, the reopening pandemic piece with the commitment to dismantling white supremacy that was articulated so well in the statement, because I really, Grace mentioned that the concern for lower level library staff, and I read an article in Library Journal the other day that really showed some strong data that demonstrates that the quote lower level library staff, those folks who are essential to on-site operations, are oftentimes people of color or in different life circumstances. So I just sort of wanted to make space for that here in this conversation, and just like Anne said, I also want to thank you all for having these discussions.
Thank you, Mary Jo. We've got some other comments in the chat that I think relate to this topic. Grace said that she believes that the longer the surge continues or worsens, the more likely that staff reduction is number of people agreeing with Anne's comments concerning research versus public service. Edward said that he was looking at a slim genealogy volume for a patron and then realized that, hey, I could have just scanned it to them and sent it to them in the same amount of time that I was looking at this. So just trying to go from one to the other. And a number of people agreeing with Mary Jo's statement. Beth Bilderback notes that most custodial staff is African American and that they are on the front line of this. And a thank you from Mary Jo to the I Pledge for the information about the I Pledge Columbia campaign. And that when students return, the effects will be felt by the entire community. Anyone else like to share with the rest of us or commiserate with the rest of us? This is your chance. We've got about 15 more minutes to go, so we still have some time if folks want to share some more ideas and comments or questions. And
Hey, Jim, it's Catherine Slover
yes,
here again. Well, one, I just wanted to sort of chime in and thank everyone who was a part of this and for participating. I think that, you know, right now these talks are really important and we're all trying to navigate the same space of you know, what COVID is doing to our institutions. And so I just wanted to thank everybody for participating. And I also just wanted to make a note, and I mentioned this during the first town hall, but I think it's important to mention it again that, you know, as everything is changing so quickly and as, you know, we're getting new information about COVID and our response to it, I just want to sort of reiterate the importance of, you know, communicating with you know, staff and coworkers and how that's sort of an essential piece to this. Anne was talking about sort of, you know, we're all feeling those same struggles, and I think that you know, it's important for us to check in on each other as an organization, but also within your organization, and that, you know, everyone's mental health is important in this as we're trying to figure out how to come back to work safely. And so I just want to, like I said, wanted to reiterate the importance of that, of checking in on your coworkers, and if you're a supervisor, checking in on your staff and making sure they're okay and feeling safe and making sure they're informed of what's going on. And I just think that, like I said, that's an important part to coming back and trying to figure this out is like I said, making sure everyone's mental health is a priority.
Okay, we have a few more. Thank you for that, Catherine. We have a few more comments in the chat. Bill has said thanks to the executive board for their statement on racism as well. And Grace has commented, I was just handed a note, Beaufort County Library and all county buildings will be closed tomorrow and Friday. The library goes back to curbside until further notice. And then Edward has said, I would like to say that if anybody processes this kind of situation through writing and would like to share their thoughts, I'm on the editorial board of SC Libraries Journal, and I encourage you to submit any pieces you might have, scholarly or otherwise. I know I work through things sometimes through writing, and having an outlet can be useful, so there's a link there. And then Mary Jo says, thank you, Catherine, and Anne says thanks to Catherine as well.
okay. Anything else from the group? Well, I shall pose a question. At the end of the first town hall, we asked, well, should we do another one? And the decision was to, of course, do so because we thought we'd be a little bit closer to reopening, and that things would become a little bit clearer. So my question to you is, should we do another one, say sometime probably later next month, because if our various institutions do indeed open in August, that may be a pretty hectic time, at least initially. Would be late August, perhaps even early September, depending on how that goes. So I would like a sense of the participants of whether this has been useful, and if they'd like to do it again.
Agreed.
It sounds like most people are saying yes, most who have commented, and the consensus is late August, early September, or sometime after Labor Day. Oh, and then Anthony has a question. He said, was that you talking about racism of groups?
I think the question was being directed toward Mary
Mary
Jo.
Jo.
Yeah. Okay. Mary sent a link to our statement in the chat. And we have a proposal for about September 10th at the same time. So I'll throw that out there. How do people feel about that? It's a Thursday. Everyone like Thursday town halls? It's kind of alliterative.
Sounds like Caroliniana has a conflicting meeting at that time, so 3 p.m. Has been suggested by Edward.
Okay, it is looking like the responses we're getting that people are generally in favor of that. So, well, we'll see about the time. We try and have it in the afternoon again, but we can certainly block out September 10th and see how that works. So have a few more minutes. I'll give folks one last opportunity to ask a question or make a comment. either here or in the chat. Okay, well, I want to thank everybody for coming. I think we had a good discussion. We're able to share some useful information. I want to thank Jessica and Tabitha and Brenda, because I mean she would have been here if she could, for their help, and the other members of the SCAA board for helping set these up. And we'll see if we can hold another about September 10th about the same time. So I thank you all for coming, and that you have a good rest of the day and a good rest of the week. Thanks again.